Thank you. We're going to keep having press conferences over and over again. And when I say we, I'm talking about the government, because radical Islamists will continue to kill Americans. And what has become very, very clear is that the CVE advisory group, and now we know there is a subcommittee that Jay Johnson has started. And by the way, Jay Johnson is having a classified briefing at 3 p.m. to tell us about, in a classified setting, what happened in Orlando. And I'm telling you, I've listened to this man in classified briefings. And because they classify them, we can't tell about the things that they say that are not true in the classified briefings. But I can assure you, I learn a lot more from reading credible sources on the internet than I ever do at a classified briefing. Sometimes by the time they tell us things at a classified briefing, they've prepared their presentation a day in advance, and some of the things they tell us are already outdated and easily disprovable. But when it's private meetings, Muslim leaders will say, "What is wrong with you guys? You're getting advice from the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you not understand? Those are the Muslims that have been at war with you since 1979. What's wrong with you?" Our Muslim friends in Afghanistan, that I defied our embassy and our ambassador and the colonel in charge to go visit with when they wouldn't visit with them. These were part of the Northern Alliance that this president, this administration will not even allow in America. They defeated the Taliban for us within a matter of 4 or 5 months, and then we became occupiers. And this administration rejects the Northern Alliance fighters who were fighting for their country and also fought for ours in defeating the Taliban, and then we left them high and dry. They don't understand why we've been more friendly to the radical Islamists and allowed Muslim Brotherhood members, according to Egyptian publications, when Morsi was president. They had a publication December, I believe it was 2012, but it was while Muslim Brotherhood was in charge of Egypt. And they had an article bragging that 6 of Obama's top advisors were Muslim Brotherhood. They mentioned Imam Majid, the former president of the Islamic Society of North America, which was a named co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial. They named El Biari from Texas, who Janet Napolitano put on the CVE and then promoted him to the advisory council, gave him a classified, gave him a secret classification. And even when I exposed to her that he had downloaded documents using his classification secret, and then he had tried to offer those 2 documents to national media, she sat there in a hearing and committed a crime and lied, because first she said she didn't know anything about it, even though her chief had told the director of the Department of Public Safety in Texas the night before, because he called me and told me, "Hey, I just talked to her chief, and he says she's been fully advised about what El Biari did. She knows all about it." The next day she said, "I don't know what you're talking about." So either her chief lied or she sat there and committed a crime and lied. But she didn't know anything about it, but she said she would get to the bottom of it. When I asked her about it next time, she said that didn't happen. And do you know, there is a reporter who reported in his article that he talked to a member of the national media, and you would all recognize immediately, the Medium, who said that El Biari shopped the documents. "Here, I can furnish you these if you'll publish them and show these people to be Islamophobes, and fortunately, even though they're more liberal usually in what they do, they didn't take the documents. She said, we investigated and that never happened. They never even talked to the reporter that reported it. They never talked to anybody. And when we know she lied and committed a crime again as Secretary of Homeland Security, she said, we fully investigated. Since she's been gone, Judicial Watch was able to get documents from there. There was never an investigation. She lied about that too. So when I hear the president putting out that, look, all of my advisors are telling me the same thing here. Nobody is speaking up in opposition. Well, I guess not. You fired all of those that would tell you the truth. You fired the generals, the admirals, you fired the people in Homeland Security that were telling you the truth. And number one here today before you is one of the greatest American patriots I've ever met. And I've spent many, many, many hours with this man, and I know this man. We're talking about Phil Haney. And when he tried to lay those things out, they impaneled a grand jury to go after him, to destroy him. I tried to explain that to some of our leaders in the House. Look, you've seen what he has. You know how damaging this is to America, what they're doing in Homeland Security. We're going to have Americans continue to die. We're going to continue to have press conferences by this administration while explaining once again the radical Islamists that committed an act of hate somehow is not Islamists. Well, let me tell you, there's a guy that has a PhD that's the world-renowned expert on what is or is not Islam. We have a president that was taught a little bit about Islam in elementary school. Who do you think is the better expert? The guy, our president, that had a little bit of teaching in a Muslim school that he attended in Indonesia? Or the guy that has his PhD in Islamic studies from the University of Baghdad, who happens to be the leader of the Islamic State? I think he knows better than our president. Maybe we ought to listen to the head of ISIS about what is or is not Islam. And that's exactly what Phil Haney was trying to get across. A man with the brilliance and the intelligence and the acuity to look at things and instantly know, based on his knowledge of history, of Islam, of the Middle East, of all religions in the Middle East and in Africa, and his knowledge of the language, his knowledge of the players involved throughout history in radical Islam. He was able, it's amazing. I mean, no offense, Phil, but when I look at you, you don't scare me just from your looks. And I figure, this is a guy I can talk to because I don't have to worry about him. And guess what? The radical Islamists felt the same way. They would look at Phil Haney. They would not realize how brilliant this man is and how actually very, very clever he is, and how he could look at things and instantly be related to something else that he has seen, pull it all together, and then do, gosh, he is incredible when it comes to a work ethic. He won't stop until he proves or disproves something that he thinks may be happening. And then when he proved it and hundreds of people were verified to have radical Islamist terrorist ties, what do? They go after him with a grand jury. Why did they go after him with a grand jury? Because he filed a complaint with the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security. Why did he file that? Well, my friend Michelle mentioned that we had gotten him the ears of a number of our leaders in the House and Senate. And I want to call out my Chief of Staff, Connie Hare. She actually took him to each of those briefings. I attended some. She has been there and has been immensely helpful. He would make the briefings. Each time the members of Congress would sit there and go, oh my gosh, this guy is a treasure. This guy is something so valuable to the security of our country. We have got to protect him. And what would happen? They would talk to their staff members. And I know he mentions Nick Pallarino in his book, but it, not only Nick, but there are others who would have the ear of their member of Congress. You know, you look so good on television, which is something I don't have to worry about. I am what I am, and it ain't looking good on TV. But it's why I don't have the filter that so many in the House and Senate have. You know, you've heard the old saying, House members and senators get up every morning, look in the mirror, and see a future president. I know since the Nixon-Kennedy debates, that's when television became the most important in electing a president. That is also the line of demarcation. You can be bald and be president before that, but not in my lifetime. That will never happen. So I don't have that filter. You know, some guys, and this is, and some of the staffers know, you know, you can be president someday. But if you help this guy, I mean, you have a career that's taken off. But obviously the stuff he's got is so damning to this administration and the damage they've done to America in failing to protect us from radical Islam. If you start helping this guy, they're going to have to not just come after him, which they're going to do, they're going to come after you. And then there goes your great career, and who knows where it goes. Maybe you're a senator, maybe you're president, but it doesn't go anywhere if the Obama administration comes after you because you're helping him. Over and over, we had people in the House and Senate say, this guy's a treasure, he needs helping, but I'm really not going to be the one to be able to help him. And the last straw, he's told, go file a complaint with the Inspector General of Homeland Security. I was livid when I heard that he had been told that by some of my friends, not in my office. I called and said, Phil, you can't do this. You can't file a complaint with the IG. We have got to do this by protecting you in a congressional office. Let a senator or a congressman. Now, I had no chairmanship. I couldn't call a hearing. So I couldn't go more than just taking him to people, make sure he went to people that could call a hearing, could expose these things. And he said, Louie, I got no choice. I got nowhere else to go. Now, we had a man commit treason, and it was treason, when he exposed classified information that he had obtained while working for the government, and now he's in Russia. And I do not defend for a moment the treason that was committed by the way in which he brought things out. But as someone who has sent people to prison, even sentenced people to death, in sentencing is where you look at, are there any extenuating circumstances that mitigate for a lesser punishment? And I think in the case of the man that committed treason, he ought to be convicted of treason. And then in sentencing, the jury needs to see and hear the evidence and be asked the question, if you're in his situation and you know the Justice Department will come after you if you bring these things to them, and you know your own agency you're working for, they'll turn on you, they'll get a grand jury coming after you, you will be the target. You can't go to the CIA. You can't go to the Justice Department. As Phil found out, leaders in Congress, while Boehner was because this was all happening while Boehner was still the Speaker, we'd already seen what Boehner did. There were 5 of us that signed that letter. there were the 5 letters that went to the different departments. And Frank Gaffney was very helpful in getting the letters drafted. Michelle and I think, may have been the only ones that added stuff, changed stuff, and got it where we wanted those letters. There was nothing factually incorrect in any of those 5 different letters. And what happened? John McCain rushed to the Senate floor and condemned us without seeing the letters. Clearly, he didn't see the letter because he was making allegations that we didn't make. And I made the mistake of saying, I just wish all these numbnuts out there who, are criticizing our letters would read the letters before they criticize. And then the headlines, I called McCain a numbnuts. But anyway, and then it was another problem when I was asked if I had any regrets of saying numbnuts about McCain. Well, he, I guess, was part of the group that I singled out. But anyway, I did have to say it was unfair to use the term numb. I don't know that was fair. But anyway. Got you a lot of points. Yeah, so I walked back the numb part. But so McCain goes to the Senate floor and he makes these allegations. And then immediately John Boehner gets on board and he makes the same allegations without reading the letters. And then Mike Rogers, the head of our Intel committee, makes the same allegations. Folks, these guys were duped by people they believed that they shouldn't have. But we already knew the acting Inspector General at Homeland Security. He had already been called down for changing an Inspector General report to help cover for the administration once. Some of us knew what would be the outcome. And there were some of us, and I'm grateful to Tom Coburn had some of his staff go with us over to Homeland Security to get a briefing before the report was finished. And I was angry, but I was not surprised. Instead of pursuing the information that was deleted by people higher up than Phil Haney, they made it about whether or not Phil Haney was authorized to enter the material pointing out people who had terrorist ties, that this administration was either looking at giving them visas or working with them, one thing or another. Very important stuff they deleted. They totally disregarded the truth and the importance of protecting America, and they turned on Phil. We, from what we understand, he didn't have authority to enter that. No, after he entered all this information, then is when they started punishing him for trying to help America. He had information that would have been helpful on the Boston bombings. He had information he brought forth on Louie Gohmert that could have very well prevented the deaths in San Bernardino. This guy, he is amazing because I've been working with him for years. He's an American treasure. And on one occasion, after he'd been thrown to the dogs, no, just file a complaint with the Inspector General. I went to one of our members that had authority of subpoena power that I didn't have, or I would have issued a subpoena myself. Said, why don't you issue a subpoena to Phil for all those documents that he's got, the thousands he has copies of? And he said, well, what are you getting at? I said, well, it will do 2 things. Number 1, it will protect the documents. And number 2, under the law, he will be allowed to have the government hire a lawyer. And the question, because he couldn't afford a lawyer, he's given his life for his country, and that includes the money he could have obviously made when you realize how intelligent he is if he had not worked for the government. And the question I was asked was, why would he need a lawyer? because the administration is going to come after him. The same reason you wouldn't protect him here in Congress is the reason he needs a lawyer. And did he need a lawyer? And I am grateful to Judicial Watch, because when the grand jury started coming after him, he needed a lawyer. And he couldn't afford a lawyer, and that's what they do. You know, they try to bankrupt you. You've got no hope, nowhere to turn. Congress doesn't help you. The Justice Department's not only not helping you, they're coming after you. They're going to prosecute you because you could hurt the administration with the information you have. But we had to get a statement from ethics, on what could be done, but Judicial Watch stepped up and they helped. And he had a lawyer. And because he has been squeaky clean his whole life, even though they put him through hell, they put his poor wife through hell, she ends up in the hospital, they don't care, because he could hurt the administration because he's trying to protect America. So they couldn't find anything. They made a big deal in front of in front of a bunch of his co-workers of taking his gun away and putting him in basically a closet. And the message from this administration was very clear. You try to stand up and protect this country against radical Islam, this is your career. Do you want to be humiliated in front of your coworkers? Have your weapon taken away? That's a devastating thing in front of your coworkers. Have your credentials crushed? You can't even get on the internet anymore. This is an American icon. He's an American hero. And he was crucified by this administration because they can't afford to have somebody stand up and speak the truth. So anyway, I like the director of the FBI, Comey. Think he's an honorable man. But at our hearing in Judiciary, he made a big splash on YouTube when I was asking him about, you didn't even go to the mosque where the Tsarnaevs went. Oh, yeah, they explained. They did investigate. They asked Tsarnaev, and he said he wasn't a terrorist. And they asked his mother, he's a good boy. He's not a terrorist. So they go the other way. And Russia warned us twice. You don't get it. This guy's radicalized. He's going to kill people. But because this administration has blinded our intelligence, our homeland security, our ability to see our enemies, they couldn't see clearly he had been radicalized. Now, Michelle Bachmann and I, Lynn Westmoreland came for part of it. Michelle and I don't know if she mentioned, but she and I met with the FBI. It was ridiculous because they classified the documents they had purged from the FBI training materials. But we were going through, there were some things like cartoons, some that was pretty inane. Okay, it doesn't really matter. But when you take things out of your briefing that let FBI agents understand what a radical Islamist believes, then you are damning our country to be hit over and over with these type of terrorist attacks. We have incredible FBI agents. Had dinner with one last night. I think the world of them. I know tons of FBI agents. I just love them, think the world of them. They're good people. But they've not been properly trained in this administration. And those that have been properly trained in prior administrations, they have seen what's happened in Justice Department and Homeland Security. If somebody stands up and says, this guy's a radical Islamist, he has ties to this guy who's a radical Islamist, and they all have ties to this mosque, well, we saw how bad the misinformation in education has become, even with our own FBI director, when I put that to Mueller, and he said, we did go to those mosques. And I didn't hear it when he said it. My staff told me when I got back, we replayed it, and then I heard it. he said, in our outreach program. In their outreach program, they never went and asked a single person at the Muslim mosque in Boston, what do you know about Tsarnaev? What's he reading these days? As Phil could tell him if they'd let him instruct. He's instructed me. He's educated me as best anybody could. And that's not easy. But if you find somebody that's looking to Louie Gohmert and is beginning to memorize the Quran with the goal of memorizing the entire Quran, you got a potential problem. Now they've moved into that area which you're hearing people talk about after Americans are killed. Well, it did seem like he was getting more religious. Right. I wish they had allowed you to be educated on what to look for. Our FBI agents don't know. I bet most of our FBI agents, even if they knew, they couldn't tell you because they'd have their gun taken away. Osama bin Laden said, you know, a big factor in his radicalization was the Muslim Brotherhood martyr Qutb, Q-U-T-B, his booklet Milestones. It's been used to radicalize a lot. And if you went online, you would find that Mr. El-Biari, that Janet Napolitano loved and protected, he bragged about what a great book that was and recommended it to other Muslims. It's the thing that Osama bin Laden said was really helpful in radicalizing him. But because our people in Homeland Security and our people in justice have been not improperly educated, they don't know what Phil Haney knows. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what authors in Islam to ask about at the mosque. So I didn't hear him say in our outreach program, but I knew he said we had been to the mosque. I said, did you even know who founded that mosque in Boston? Did you know that Al-Moody founded the Islamic Society of Boston that founded the mosque? And some of you know Al-Moody's doing, I think, 23 years in prison for supporting terrorism. And even our own Justice Department and intelligence weren't the ones. I always thought, oh, well, the FBI got him. No. The information, I'm told by some people with Justice Department, actually their tip-off came from the British. They said, this guy's supporting terrorism. You're letting him in and out. He advised the Clinton administration. He helped identify Muslims for the Clinton administration to hire and put in office. I've been asking the question, who was it that placed Huma Abedin, or Huma Weiner, who placed her as the intern with Hillary Clinton? Who did that? Was it Al-Moody? I can't find anybody that knows. Or if they know, they won't say. Who placed her with Hillary Clinton? And now she is not just a past acquaintance. I mean, she's still a top advisor for Hillary Clinton. So maybe, I don't know who it was. I'm just wondering who made that placement. Because we know he helped the Clinton administration and the Bush administration until they finally arrested him out at Dulles Airport when he came in. We know that he was helping people find Muslims that would be good helps as chaplains in the military, chaplains in prison. Have y'all heard about how people are being radicalized in prison? Okay, well, he helped find just the right Muslim for our prison systems. We got big trouble. And Phil Haney is an American hero. And that's why, you know, I came busting out here because I love this guy. He put his, I love Michelle. She said, he risked his career. No, he lost his career by standing up for what? He didn't just risk it. He lost it while trying to protect our country. So every time you hear the letters CVE, don't be thinking countering violent extremism. What you need to understand is, oh, that's the group in this administration that wants us to think racism every time we see an act of war by a radical Islamist. because that's who they are. That's what they're doing. And I thought, well, it was a good thing. They wouldn't let Elibiari go. They kept him on, kept defending him. And then after he tweeted out that, look, and it was after, I think, Americans were killed in the Middle East. He said, look, the international caliphate's inevitable and Americans need to get used to it. Well, finally, that was enough, not to fire him, but to let him go ahead and retire at the end of this term. And now we've got a lady named Alawa, who articled this week pointing out a bunch of her tweets. She says 9/11 changed the world for good. Well, then that's being she meant it as how it's helped America. No, look at her tweets, her other tweets. It makes very clear. She is a racist to the bone. She hates white people, especially white men. She is a bigot when it comes to gender. She's a racist when it comes to Caucasian. And she hates America. And she says, oh, yeah, 9/11, that's when all these idiots can put out their flags and have, this is a woman that is advising Homeland Security now. But the good news is she's where Elibiari started before he was promoted to being on the advisory council. You start out CVE, and if you do a good job, they move you to advisory. She's on the CVE right now, and so I guess next, because she hates Caucasians and men, she'll probably be promoted pretty quickly. Yes, ma'am, you have a question?
I do, actually. And I also have a statement. I want to say to everyone who ever felt afraid to be called a racist, be not afraid. Because if it means doing something about this issue, being called a racist, then stand firm, stand tall, and be racist, if that's what it is.
God bless you. Isn't that awesome? Thank you.
They are using the issue of race. This United States, yes, we know, we have had our racial issues, but then let it be between the races in America. They will not use civil rights. They will not use the history to further their goal. So anybody afraid to be called that strong and firm. And that's all I have to say.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Well, obviously the people up here in front of you are not afraid of being called racist, but
they want people to be afraid.
Yes.
And why should we be afraid? So that
Yeah.
they can take over.
Well, I'll leave you with the one comment that it's an old adage here in Washington, D.C., and I will commend it to you, though I'm a Christian. I think there's a lot to be said for the wisdom of this statement, that in Washington, D.C., no matter how cynical you get, it's never enough to catch up. Thank you.